Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the second of our LAPADA Leaders webinars. I'm just going to kind of wait a few moments before I introduce our cultural design leaders today. So just bear with us as we gather you in from the waiting room, and then I will introduce you. So, thank you so much to all of you who have joined us today. LAPADA members, other trade associations, people who have come from the interior design community. And we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by two design legends. Maybe sounds a little old, doesn't it? So icons, design icons today with me. So I'm going to start by introducing Kelly Hoppen, who well, really needs no introduction, with over 40 years experience at the forefront of the design industry. She's one of the most celebrated and sought after interior dezigers, and it's really her passion began even at the age of 16 years old when she sort of kick-started her career. So hopefully we'll hear some great things. Really as well renowned, I would say, but Kelly can change this, for the ever-evolving style that really has defined that subtle fusion of East meets West, which I think chimes very well with the art and antique sector as well. She's also the author of 9 design books, has been on TV, a BBC Dragon's Den judge, Great British Design Challenge, even a celebrity apprentice in aid of comic relief, which was enjoyed by many, and is a government appointed Great Ambassador for the UK. So welcome, Kelly. Thank you very much for joining us. And then we have Katharine Pooley, who is a sought-after interior designer working internationally. I think it's safe to say there's no country almost that you haven't been to, although Bhutan, is that one of yours? I don't know. Katharine has been nominated or named British Interior Designer of the Decade, International Designer in Asia, Entrepreneur of the Year, and I think it's her sort of innate sense of adventure as well as her love of design that shaped how she's created her look. I think it's something like over 150 countries you've traveled to, and not just kind of traveled in the style which many of us might like to be accustomed to, but you've driven dog sleds across the North Pole, across the Sahara. So clearly a tenacious and gutsy businesswoman who is not going to be put off by coronavirus. So thank you so much for joining us. What I thought we might do is kick off with a kind of slightly generic question to the two of you, and then we'll kind of go through some other slightly more granular ones. But Kelly, if I start with you, and just a very simple question of kind of what's the impact, you think, of the coronavirus on the interior design trade, and what will it be?
Well, I mean, personally for myself, because a huge part of our business is in Asia, we're working on sort of 28 live projects at present. But what it's meant was that we've had to change our whole infrastructure in how we're working. So we have offices in Beijing and Shanghai and Hong Kong, but we now have to work with suppliers all over the world to see what stock is available in Asia. So you change your whole logistics. I think overall, as a business, I think that home will become the most important thing in everybody's life, which is a good tick. Whereas if you look at fashion, it will become something that won't be quite as needed at present. So I think people are looking inward into their homes and what they can do at every level, because I do work with this morning, for example, where we're helping people with their homes and how they can recreate space in confined spaces with big families. So everybody is looking at how they can better their homes. What I think it will be, though, is that as a designer, and we've already started this, that hygiene and the way that you use your homes will have a massive impact now on the design world, whether it's hotels, whether it's private homes, so that you are building ante-rooms before you enter any premises in the world, which means you take your shoes off, your outer clothing, you hang your mask, you wash your hands, you sanitize. But more than that, I think intricate carving, design, marble, things that will retain dirt and be unhygienic, I think as a designer, it will be far more prevalent that we will have to design in a way that is manageable, because I don't think that this particular virus will be the last, and I think it will be something that will be a way of life for us for a long time. So I feel a responsibility as a designer working all over the world that we're going to have to look at new ways that we can look at sustainability, that we can design in a way that's practical, but without losing the luxury and the beauty of what we do every day of our lives. So I think that the whole mindset is going to change massively. And I think that for smaller businesses and people that are watching this and going to watch this, I think we have to start thinking outside of the box even more in terms of how we relate to people and how we design for people in a way that's much more meaningful. So I think there's going to be a massive mind change that's already happened, and certainly happened in myself personally, as to how people want to actually continue living going forward. That doesn't mean it's going to take away from growth, and we've seen that certainly now signing up projects in the last 2 months. People will still want to develop and create things, but we will have to think of a lot more things rather than it being so selfish in that we just want to make it look beautiful. So I think in a nutshell, that's how I see what's happened in the last 2 months and what's going to happen going forward.
Thank you. And Katharine, the same question to you.
So I agree with Kelly wholeheartedly. I think people are really looking at their houses now and their homes and what they want from them. I think it's still fairly new. We don't know a whole lot about this virus. I obviously get a lot of inspiration from the Spanish flu pandemic and how that rolled out. And they did say there was going to be 3 cycles. So, but from the Spanish flu to now, there's been quite a peaceful time with pandemics. I know there's been a few coming in and out. So I'm hoping that we might get back some normality. But I do agree that now is the time that we're going to have to start designing for better spaces. Gyms, for example, might have perspex, which I know they've also started to do that in China. I mean, gym's quite a hard place to open at this stage because it's close environments and sweat and germ spreading. So I think they might be more creative by having perspex in between, allowing that running. Cleaning is going to be a much bigger issue. Taking off shoes, as Kelly said, you know, the Japanese have always done that. I lived in Asia for 16 years of my life, so I'm very, very familiar with that. Maybe on the home dressing side of things, we might have guests having their own knives and forks. Definitely there'll be another set of sheets for them when they come to stay. The hotel industry is something that needs clever planning, actually. So it's still early days, but the design elements are going to have to be massive, I think.
So taking that on, actually, and I'll start with you, Katharine, and then we'll go back to Kelly, but just thinking about that kind of thoughtful design and the trends to come, do you think that kind of the fashion for the open plan living spaces, both inside the home and in the office, will change?
Well, interesting enough, we were trying to we'll just talk about the office for the moment, because that's quite an interesting one. We were just trying to do our plan out of how we can get people back to the office. And we currently have, you know, a line of people, and then people the other side of that at the desk. Luckily, there's a 2-meter distance opposite, but you couldn't have people next to you. So it's probably going to be one person on, one person off, one person on, one person off. So how long that's going to be going for, I don't know, but hopefully only till October. And again, you know, we can only speculate of what we're hearing from the government. But from work perspectives, I mean, you know, shops at the moment, you've got a queue of people, haven't you? How long can people maintain that queue for? Are they going to be patient enough to be doing that in for the years to come? It's not sustainable. We will have to find something going forward that will work for everybody. And I think the retail industry is one of the industries that will unfortunately probably struggle the most unless we can start getting a lot online. And online is happening all the more, isn't it? I mean, since I've been down in lockdown, I've done all my fabric designing through these online video calls, and it's worked. There's no doubt about it. We're all getting a little bit fed up of these Zoom calls because they're quite dementing, but they have worked for the time being, and we've really enjoyed them. But we're spending all our time now on computers rather than social interacting or talking on phones.
And yeah, the hybrid, the life that is the new hybrid. And Kelly, so obviously the commercial space is one, but in the home space, just thinking about how you can kind of have your home as a sanctuary. But I think that, you know, many sort of homes have had, for loved ones, have had that kind of open plan living space. Do you think that's something that might change, or is it about the anterooms, as you mentioned, that will be the thing that keeps you safe?
I think there are a few things here. I think that open plan living will continue to be something that people will do, because you have to remember, when you're actually in your own home, you're with your family. So that's your space. I just think it needs to be zoned and created in a way that is more adaptable. I think when it comes to public spaces like offices, like Katharine is talking about, what I have found in the last 2 months is the productivity in my company has soared by 150%. And actually, I think a lot of my 70 staff will actually end up working from home. So we will do that sort of rotation. But I think actually what it's doing is giving people space to breathe in environments where you work, so that you're not jammed together, you know, where you're employing more and more people. I sort of feel that there is, you know, if you look at it from a completely out of space type of way, you know, the planet was about to explode. It was overheating. Everything was being destroyed. It's almost like I've tried to look at this as a reset button. So instead of thinking, well, you know, come October, come November, it's going to get back to normal. It will never be normal. This is, we have to start preparing for the new normal. So for, you know, when you're doing development, say in Asia or anywhere in the world, but as Asia is the only place that is open right now, people will look to see how families can live in spaces together, rather than there being this thing which has been for the last 100 years, which is how do we make space to have time on our own, and you have extra rooms to do that. So everything will go back to hygiene and how you can protect yourself and therefore protect people that are going to come into your home. So it's about materials that you use. It's about how things are made. It's going to be longevity of materials. It's going to be, as Katharine said, in gyms, you know, of course, gyms will reopen. I heard that in America, they're opening hotels, but your hotel room will not be cleaned until you leave. You know, there will be a whole different way. And I think that individuals will just have to learn to protect themselves and learn to live with a new way. So if it means that you're, you know, listen, we've all been cleaning our homes and working, yeah. So we all know how to do it now.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'll book into a hotel, you'll clean your room, and actually, do you know what? I feel a lot better cleaning my own space. Yeah. So I think that everything is about adapting. But what I will say as a designer for 44 years, I will never give up on the beauty of design. I will never give up on the craftsmanship, the luxury, you know, creating what is right for that person to live in. But I think what will be a key element on all developments and homes around the world where it's possible is outdoor space. That will be something, you know, organic that people will want. And it will mean that people will be leaving cities, moving further away. And so perhaps we'll see a balance with cars and people, because we're now going to disperse our populations over a bigger area than the way the world has become, which has been so dense.
So that actually leads me very nicely onto my next question, because that's what I was going to ask. So I'll ask it to Katharine. Is do we see a sort of a city exodus here in the UK, but across the world, and a kind of desire for a more bucolic existence, but also a resistance to city living?
So I was talking to someone at Savills who said that actually the country prices have gone up, and more inquiries have gone up, and actually people want to leave the city to have that space. And I think that originally a lot of people wanted to get out of London and get into the country and have the fresh air, and of course they were caught in the lockdown and couldn't go out to their second homes. But yes, I do. I think people are now going to be looking at their lives, what they want from their lives. They want to be perhaps more in nature, and I think we are going to see a very different outlook. Going overseas is probably a very different feeling right now. Are people going to want to have their holidays here in the England countryside, or go over to the south of France or to Europe or even to Asia? That's going to be a big question we're going to probably see for July, maybe even August, when they lift this up. But we're going to see very, very big changes, as Kelly said, in the way that we're going to live and what we want from our lives, and perhaps less is more.
And to add to that, Kelly, what do you think are kind of, because you both work globally, but a lot of our clients and members are selling globally. Do you see the same trends in Asia, Middle East, to kind of leave that city dwelling and change the environment they're living in?
Well, I think in Asia, certainly in India and China, people have been, we've been building these sort of tower blocks where we're spending millions of pounds on these properties for first-time buyers. So you've got to remember, in those territories, people tended to live with their grandparents, their parents, and then the children and the grandchildren all in one building. And that has changed now. And that's why all of these buildings are being built. But what they do is they build clubhouses, they build gyms, they have outdoor areas for people to live in. So they've almost been kind of ahead of us because they've lived through SARS. And, we should be looking to them, because they've got it right, even though everyone says it came from China. It doesn't really matter where it came from. The fact is they've learnt to live with pandemics and disease. And I just think that, as Katharine said, yes, people will want to move out of London. I certainly am. And I never thought I would leave the city. I will come into work a few days a week because I now know I can actually work remotely as well. So I think this has given everyone an opportunity to kind of think, what's really relative right now? It's your family, it's your health, it's your well-being and your business. And how can you balance that? We've talked for years, how do we balance life and, work and our families? And everyone's never quite got it right. And I think there are lots of positives that can come out of this in terms of mentally, how we look at our lives and how we make that balance, how we spend time with the people we really want to spend time with, and actually, what is the life we want to lead? And that's where our industry really comes into its fore. And that's why I think we should all be feeling so grateful and focused and positive, because what we do, and obviously Katharine and I are working at the very, very high end, but it goes down at all levels. We have the ability now to create a new world in design. And that's what we need to do. And as leaders, we need to really do this. And I'm writing papers at the moment to do with all of this, because I think that there's an opportunity to create something fantastic. And because of technology, Katharine was talking about online. Everything is really online. What we've all been able to achieve in terms of getting presentations out, presenting them, ordering them, getting them done, it shows that so much more can be done with a lot more time at home. And therefore, I think we have to, as an industry, look at all the positives and all come together to try and collate something that is easy for everyone to use. And I think that's actually quite exciting, rather than it being a negative.
And
Sorry,
go on. I was going to bring you in, Katharine.
It was quite interesting. I think to begin with, everyone was incredibly nervous, frightened, the unknown. We didn't know what to do. And to be in closed spaces was quite difficult for us. We're used to freedom here in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think that we've now adjusted, haven't we, to doing everything online. We are humans. We adjust so easily to everything.
And we're British.
But we have adjusted. The only thing I would say is, I agree with you, Kelly, we all want to work from home. We're saving money. We're not having to do that transportation. We're probably, I save just alone 5 hours a day by going back and down the motorway, because I live in Oxfordshire. So the time we're saving is huge. But also I'm human and I want a hug,
Yeah.
I see a couple of my staff and it's like hi with the elbow or keep your distance, or how do we say hello? We need to come up with a new hello. Maybe
that will come back though. That will come back.
You think?
Yeah, I think we're pack animals. We're going to have to hug. We'll just find a way of doing that. But just carrying on for the digital, because you kind of talked about being able to see and choose fabrics, and how people are kind of developing this sort of hybrid way of marketing their business. I wonder, because we've got kind of picture dealers, antique dealers, all sorts of people online, as well as collectors. What tips would you give to some of those people trying to be spotted by you, let's say, in terms of getting their things online? What
So
attracts you? First
I
to
think,
Katharine, actually, because just...
okay.
So very quickly, I also would love to encourage people and inspire us to keep motivated, because it also could be, you know, a mental thing. I think we need to keep driving ourselves and get up in the morning. And my first reaction was, right, what can I do? And I looked around my dining chairs, you know, kids' paws everywhere, and the dog, excuse me, had peed on the carpet or the curtain. So I thought, well, I'll do a little bit of, you know, renovation. So there were a couple of Zoom fabric suppliers that came up with Zoom calls, and I started looking at them. Then I got the samples, and you know, 2 weeks later I've got new cushions or new dining chairs. So it is possible. I also started to think that, you know, gosh, it's the Battersea antique fair, and I love going to that little antique fair. And I saw an email, and they had some nice pieces, and the person who sent the email had said, well, look, you can log on here and you can actually start spending the time to do the research. I don't know about you, Kelly, but I don't have the time to do the research all the time. The documents that I'm constantly getting, it's a lot of reading material, and that's nighttime reading, because during the day is so busy. Whereas now, down in lockdown, we have had that time to do that. And you can still buy things online. And it's amazing how these newsletters, I encourage everyone to do newsletters. We're doing them bi-weekly now, and then the response is huge. There are ways, we just have to be very creative. People out there do want to spend still.
And Kelly, so I suppose the same question to you: how do we attract your attention? But also, do you think that people are actually going to get sort of virtual fatigue as this goes on?
They won't, because it will become a way of life. You know, you just have to, you know, if you can only drink water and eat French fries, and that's what's going to keep you alive, that's what you eat and that's what you survive on. You know, to give you an example, and it had never really occurred to me, if the Chelsea Flower Show couldn't go ahead, so there were endless people that had created plants to be delivered to that. And I noticed something on Instagram with an amazing company called Bespoke Nurseries, who was basically advertising these incredible big olive trees, selling them off at, you know, 150 quid a piece, delivered same day. So I called the guy up, because I was doing a lot of gardens and things. And I said, is this for real? And he said, absolutely. Put them in touch with all my friends, with all the jobs we were doing. I bought some for our new barn that we're doing. And he explained that he had so much stock left over because of this, but because of Instagram being so alive and people constantly looking, as Katharine's saying, we've all got more time, and people can definitely advertise what they want to do. And let me tell you, throughout this lockdown, I have had fabrics sent to me. I haven't had to look at them online. People are still working, still trying to keep their companies going, and it's a catch-22, because if we don't give them the work, they can't stay alive. So everyone is supporting everybody, and I just think that, you know, of course we'll end up hugging people and we'll get back to some normality, and hotels and restaurants will open. But in terms, what we're talking about now is business and design, and I think that everything is accessible. I think it's more difficult with furniture, because to get a piece of furniture delivered and know you don't love it, that's harder. It's harder to send back. But there will become a way that we'll be able to do this. There will be companies that will have vans that will have stuff on it. They'll come to your studio, it will be in the van. People will come up with new innovative ways to work. It will happen. We're just going to watch it now unfold.
I've suddenly got the idea of like a LAPADA Airstream that's kind of fitted out, that we drive to you with everything in it.
Why not?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to save more money renting a Berkeley Square or whatever it is. If you think of them, you know, how you actually spend your, you know, get your buck for your money nowadays, you'll end up spending less on air travel, and you'll only travel when it's necessary. And we all love to travel. And the way in which people exhibit, and art fairs, and virtual fashion shows, and whatever people are doing, it will become normal. And then when you do have something specific that you can go to, it will be really that much more special.
Yeah. Just thinking about the new normal and the sort of trends, I'm just thinking about kind of materials and things. And I heard something interesting on the radio this morning that I wasn't aware of. That, I mean, we've all kind of heard the statistics that coronavirus stays on surfaces, metal surfaces, for 3 days, cardboard for 24 hours. Apparently on a copper alloy, it goes within a matter of hours, and they're trialing this in certain hospitals because it's kind of clean. see that you'll be looking in terms of in sort of projects, looking at copper, looking at marble? Do you think materials will change a little bit in terms of people's desires? Kelly first, and then we'll
Yeah,
go to
absolutely. I think we're all going to be aware of that, and we use all of those materials anyway. But I've designed 4 massive new projects in this lockdown, and yeah, I have been more conscious of what I've used. But because I've worked in Asia for the last 24 years, I'm very aware of people saying we can't use that because it would take too long to clean. And it isn't till now that I've realized actually what they meant. I just thought, well, you get a duster out and, you know, crystal chandeliers or whatever. They're very specific about hygiene, but I hadn't realized the real implication of that, because until you experience something yourself. I know that I love the smell of Dettol now better than my own scented candles, you know. So, but I just think, yes, we're all going to change the materials that we use, but not in a way that we spoil what we've created. And if you look back, years back, at how we changed to using more sustainable fabrics than we used to, we found new ones that we love. So we'll discover things, we'll create things, and hopefully there'll be fabric designers out there coming up with technology like will.i.am is for fashion that will enable us to, you know, to have something new. So that's why I'm saying there's an opportunity for so many sectors out of this. If they put on their mindset to think in a different way and stop talking about the old normal, but just talk about life as it is going forward, I think everyone's mindset will be able to be much more creative, and actually people will be able to make money and have businesses out of it.
And Katharine, so in terms of looking at what's happening now, have you kind of seen, just thinking about the opportunities and what projects might need, have you actually seen a sort of a pickup in projects? I mean, because we're looking at so much of life on pause, but have you had sort of new commissions while this is going on? Are people getting in touch?
So we've been luckily very, very busy. And during this whole lockdown, we have been procuring, which I think I would have thought would have been a very hard thing to do. But in actual fact, as Kelly said, a lot of people have been open and they're really willing to work. So we're actually installing, we did our first virtual installation in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago, which was quite interesting. And we're about to do a massive 40,000 square foot installation in August and another one in July. So we are still installing, we're still going ahead. In actual fact, a lot of construction is still going ahead. With regards to new business, well, we took on 2 new projects just last week. So I do still think there are people out there going, I really want my house to be beautiful now, and let's crack on. So I'm hoping that the first 2 months was just shock, and now it's going to go back to normality. Just quickly going back, if you don't mind me saying, Farah, on materials. Look, I actually did design a copper house many, many years ago, about 12 years ago. It was kind of interesting. I'm not sure, I mean, it's wonderful that it disappears, but I don't want people to be frightened of bacteria or viruses. We have to learn to live with them. Otherwise, we're just going to become precious. But I think materials should be used where they fit best. You know, Kelly and I have both done a lot in China, the Middle East, India. You need marble there because it's so hot. So I think material should be used. I'm not necessarily going to use a marble in Scotland, which is where I'm from, and it's freezing. So it's got to be specific to a project. And we're just going to be spraying a lot more and finding materials that aren't going to clog it up. But we're going to be more careful, I would say, going forward.
And I think one of the things, I mean, you talked about, Kelly, the sort of the reset button, and, you know, we're all very conscious that we're listening to the birds. We can see the stars at night, even in, you know, West London where I am. So there's some real pleasures that have come about from this, which I suppose leads people to think even more about the sustainability, and kind of when we sort of restart or continue as you're doing, what are the things that we can do to make us more sustainable? And I think within the art and antiques trade, we feel that that's an area that we cover quite well, in the sense that we really are just reusing things that have been around for a really long time and loving them, so the pre-loved and reuse. But what do you think? How do we keep the skies clear and also feed our desire for beautiful homes and consumerism?
Well, I'm not a magician, But first of all, you know, antiques and vintage, you know, as you know, I have a massive love for that. So, you know, you're doing everything right, because that's renewing and passing on. I just think that look, there are a lot of people that are going to get on a plane the minute they can and go to holiday in France and Spain. They're going to continue. Of course, there's going to be this, you know, and people are going to go shopping mad for clothes they're never going to wear. And, you know, there are going to be a proportion of people like that. But I genuinely think, and I do a lot of talks on social media and try and talk to everyone that writes to me, that people have definitely had a mind change. And I think that we've had a glimpse, literally a glimpse of what the planet could be like and how we had ruined it. And I think we're going to do our damnedest to try and keep it as best we can. Now, I know I was at the studio yesterday and it took me 40 minutes to get home instead of 10 because there were more cars on the road. That's inevitable. But I just think that people are going to be more aware. I think we've lived the last 30 years saying, I'm going to do more for the planet, but we don't. You know, we think by just, I don't know, not using an aerosol, that's going to help. I think genuinely now everybody is going to really stop and count to 10 and think about what we're doing. So anything that we can do in terms of build, people are going to try and be more sustainable with build, and there is going to be more building, and we're going to be renovating more homes, and people are going to be spending money on product. That is inevitable. But I think people will have a choice, and I think it's the choice that's important here. And I think hopefully, and I pray that more people will try and be more careful. I don't think much will change in terms of what you see in the home. I don't think there's going to be this, you know, this thing. I was in the studio yesterday and cleared out my own office and made it slightly more minimalist. And actually, I quite enjoyed it. I'm sure in 5 minutes it'll be filled with more paintings and stuff everywhere. But, you know, I just think it's a gradual thing that people are going to have to find their feet and how they want to live. And we want a better world for our children and grandchildren. And that's ultimately what we live for, isn't it?
Yeah, and moving on from that, Katharine, do you think we might sort of, I suppose in logistics, back to logistics, will we kind of look for the craftsmanship and locally sourced things in each area, whether it's the UK, whether it's Asia, whether it's Italy? Do you think we'll be kind of seeking to keep it local in terms of how we procure and design things?
I hope so. So look, I love nature. That's my biggest thing in life. And actually during this lockdown, we haven't been able to perhaps import things as quick or as fast as we wanted to. So we have had to come back to UK for the resources. And I think it's a great opportunity for smaller businesses or, I mean, the original craftsmanship here in the UK was extraordinary. And I would love to see us going back to those. I mean, even taking, you know, foods, for example, I'm more likely to go to my local little farmer's hut than I am to a massive supermarket. But the same applies to joinery or woodwork or materials. I'd love to find it here and support Great Britain. It's a really good opportunity for us. And I agree with Kelly, you know, the world has had to stop. And we have seen those stars and we've seen the animals and wolves coming into France. And, you know, I feel like Cinderella every time I go out in the morning to feed my chickens because it's like a zoo out there. But we've got to sustain it. And I really encourage everybody out there to please just stop and breathe and know that we can do this and we have to protect it. And it's not for us, it is for our grandchildren.
Very good answer. I think it's going to be interesting as well within the art and antique space, actually looking at whether there's a trend towards, we've had this French decorative look for quite a long time in some areas, and whether there'll be a sort of a trend back to some of that kind of the British sort of mahogany, Georgian pieces that work so well with, you know, 1950s modern design and contemporary ceramics, that kind of mixing. But I wonder whether there'll be, you know, less of a look to some of the sort of more international elements and a re-look at British design within the UK.
Do you want me to take that on me? Okay, so
yeah,
look, There's more Victorian antiques, believe it or not, in Tasmania in Australia than there are in the UK right now. And that's peculiar, but that's obviously the Victorian era that they went off. I've, like Kelly, I love antiques, and I'm a great East meets West and putting, collating all the sorts of bits of designs together. Will the Victorian period come back? Not sure. Georgian, people, yes, I don't want to be rude in case those people out there loved it. But Georgian, yes, people love that period, or Art Deco. There's definitely room for all of that, but I wouldn't rule out the France. France is just across the way. It's a train away, or it's a boat away. I think we should still encourage it. Middle Eastern or Moroccan or Asian, I love the Asian influence, but there's a lot of that still in the UK that you can use. It doesn't mean you're going to have to import it. But
Can I just say, I don't think it's more the antiques. I think you should be able to buy whatever you want. I think antiques is a global look. I think more what Katharine was saying, and what I sort of agree with, is, being an ambassador for great, is we need to find craftspeople that make something new today here, whether it's a basket weaver or a lace maker or a joiner or somebody who makes copper or stone. Or what we did was we sold all our factory machines to the East, and we don't have them anymore. So when this lockdown happened, I was trying to help various people, find sources for things that they needed, not knowing how long this would last for. And it was really hard. So I think to prop up the country, we need to be able to support small businesses and craftspeople. I think it's more about craftspeople. I think always people are going to want a bit of French. They're going to want a bit of deco, whether it's mahogany or whatever it is. We're always going to want that because that's the way we live. So I don't think it's more about having British furniture as such.
We should encourage, I think, more apprenticeships, Freya. I think apprenticeships are the way forward, because we've got lazy, if I'm honest, over the years. Let's get it from somewhere else. It's cheaper. But no, let's bring it back and let's do it well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope, sort of just from my own network and looking at Instagram, the amount of time people who are actually quite talented, but now have had time to really invest during this period in with woodwork, glasswork, all of those things has been extraordinary. So I hope there is a resurgence in some of the craftsmanship and apprenticeships out there. You're quite right. I mean, the watch and jewellery industry do it quite well, but we need to look to some of the other makers as well. I think we've got quite a lot of questions mounting up, so I'm conscious of time. So I was going to just ask two little questions of each of you. And one is just, whilst people are spending time, at home, what's one little thing that they could do to refresh their look? So maybe it's decluttering, maybe it's creating the ultimate shelfie. And then the last question is, where or what do you find solace in at this moment? So I think if we start with you, Katharine, and then go on to Kelly, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Well, the last question is very easy. I go and spend all my time with my chickens just because they're the smartest creature right now, and they never answer back, but they're very faithful. So definitely get out to nature. With regards to what you can do now, I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to do all those things, whatever they may be, that you never get the chance to do normally, whether it is for your filing or your organizing or your will. I mean, gosh, I did my will during this lockdown. These things that take time that you never ever get the opportunity to do. And I think it's a great opportunity to have your list and to tick it off. We're never going to have this again. I mean, how old are we? And this has never happened to us before. So benefit from it. Don't be sad by it. Embrace it.
Embrace it. Thank you. And Kelly?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that clearing out your home and your cupboards and getting all of, I've said on my posts every day, if you come out of this lockdown, you haven't done that, you've got egg on your face. Like, everything should be immaculate. But I think in terms of your home and what you can do, what I've been saying to people is move things around, take every single item off every surface, put it into a room on a floor, and re-accessorize your homes, changing things around. But more than that, move big bits of furniture. We become so habit forming. Once you plonk something down, it never moves. If you buy a certain flower, that flower is the same flower and it goes in the same vase. It never gets, move things around. Because you're at home and you're able to go into another room and come back, you can keep changing it. So I think that your home can actually have been completely remodeled whether it's changing what you put on your bed, which is the largest piece of furniture in the bedroom, to reorganizing your cupboards, color coordinating your books, which is something that I did, you know, drove me nuts, but I did it. There are so many things that you can do in your home. And I think that when you come out of this, you'll feel very cleansed and refreshed. In terms of what I do, to, you know, as solace, it's just being around my partner and spending time with them. I've done more like house parties with friends. I've spent more time with friends than I normally do. The only thing for me is not being able to be with my family, but you know, that will soon be unlocked. But other than that, I feel quite good. I've managed the time well after the initial fear, I think, that we all had for the first 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
It's like an eternity, doesn't it, Fred? But actually, it's only been 2 months.
I know.
Well, on my sort of chalk thing, it's 65 days, I think I've got to.
Oh, is it?
Yes, I've done like a little prison thing with my son. So we've got, so Gillian, who is on our marketing team, has been sifting through the questions and answers. So she's going to kind of come in with some of them now. Gillian, are you there?
Yeah.
Great. Do you want to give the first question and let us know whether it's to both or one person to start with?
Yeah, so this question is for both. It says there is an IFS report that was out today citing that women are more at risk to lose out on jobs and career progression opportunities during lockdown. As two highly successful entrepreneurs, do you recognize the risk for women, or do you think that this is an opportunity to create a more equitable existence within a recalibrated workplace?
Well, I'd be very sad to hear that, actually, if that is the case. And I'd love to know, you know, who wrote the report. I mean, I hope that is not the case. I still feel there's a huge amount of opportunity for men and women out there. We live in a very equal environment, and I think we're very lucky to be living in Britain in these times. So I hope that's not the case. I mean, certainly I haven't laid off anybody in my company, and I would say we're 80% women. We did try and that last year.
I agree with you. I think that statistic has been just pulled out of that pot. I think it's absolutely equal about how many people have lost their jobs, being male or female. I think there are opportunities for everybody. And I think that, yes, we're going to go through a really, really, really tough time, and we're going to go into a recession. Let's not, you know, kid ourselves. But I think that, you know, I'm not sort of separating men and women, but I think women can be very resourceful. And I think there are going to be lots of ways that people can be finding work, working from home very well as women. But I think that across the board, but can I just ask you something, Katharine? You also have more women than men. I do too, and I don't understand that in my company.
I would love to. It doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, me too.
Industry doesn't. We did actually employ, you know, a good handful of men last year, and we would love to get that balance, because I think the balance is very, very important.
It's weird, isn't it?
I do go back though very quickly, very fair to that question. You know, as Kelly said, we are going into recession, and I feel incredibly sympathetic to anybody who loses their job during this time. I think we need to be more resourceful. I think we need to get out there now, and we need to get back on our feet and plod forward. I mean, the government's clearly very nervous about the economy, and we need to push forward before it does go, you know, too deep in that we can't pull ourselves out. So just get up and keep going.
And one other thing, in terms of people in our industry that have lost their work, you know, we're both very fortunate, Katharine, we're very busy, but you know, I will not employ anybody else permanently because I have a big staff, but I do subcontract people. So anyone that's out there, male or female, that has been in this business, that's lost their job, they should advertise on Instagram and social media what they do, and so that people like Katharine and myself, when we need to subcontract out to other people, there will be opportunities out there for sure.
The other thing
go on, Katharine.
What I have done is, you know, I feel quite a part to this industry, and I really want to keep suppliers going. And I can feel that everybody is obviously very anxious and very nervous. There are some that are struggling more than others, and that's really where you were at the time that the virus arrived. But, you know, with my procurement, I've been very, very careful. I would divvy it up a lot more fairly rather than giving it one to my favorite supplier, so I can keep the industry going. If we all go down, it's not going to be very good.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you, Katharine. Thank you. In how to kind of spread the load or share the love.
Yeah.
Gillian, is there the question? I've seen one that I quite want to ask at the end.
Yeah, sure. So another one that we got that is also for both of you. What objects and spaces do you think people will want in their homes now as a result of the crisis?
Did you?
Kelly?
Object, yeah, thanks, Katharine. Well, probably a comfortable bed. If people haven't actually changed their bed, which you should do every 10 years, that would probably be a first. I think it's going to be things that people love. You know, I think you'll spend more time. You know, we were doing talks on TV about what you do for your desk, how you make your home desk nice. And I always say to people, that's one aspect, but the next aspect is what you look at. People need to look at what's on their walls, what's on their surfaces. I think people will want to buy things that make them feel good. And that could be art, it could be antiques, it could be books, it could be anything. I think that, I can't really answer that because I don't know, but I think that people will choose things that they really want to look at, because we've all had this experience now of being locked in. So you've always in the back of your mind thinking maybe it will happen again. Yeah. So you kind of want to get your home absolutely the way you want it.
I would also like to add the technology part of this, because, you know, the government was spending an awful lot of money doing that fast train to Birmingham. And I think 5G is what we sort of need, especially the people who are now in the country. I mean, I'm a prime example of that. I've come into London especially for this because my Hangouts or my Zooms keep dropping. So I would love to have a little bit better internet. And I think there's a big population of my staff actually and the rest of the world who would probably want the same. So yeah. Yes, we are going to make our house look beautiful, but we also want it to be efficient.
Yeah.
Even in Soho, we need better 5G.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's notoriously bad around where all the media hub is. Okay, Gillian, have you got one more, and then I'll ask a final question, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. Is yours from this list? I don't want to take it if
mine is the one about the Roaring Twenties.
Okay, I thought it might be. Yeah. Again, this would be for both of you. What do you think of the future of design fairs?
Wow, ooh, that's a really tough one, isn't it? Do you want me to take this, Kelly, or are you happy with me to take it?
Yeah, take it. Yeah. I'll follow on.
Yeah. Well, look, let's take Maison Objet. I mean, that's just one of the biggest. I mean, they have got to really rethink this. I mean, I don't think they'll have one in September. January might be a different thought. But maybe we'll go around with gloves and masks and they can find a way. I mean, masks are going to change, aren't they? You've got to see your mouth now, so it's got to be a perspex. Look, I hope they still continue because that's big business for a lot of people. We just need to find a way. And I think this is one of the reasons the government keeps saying, be alert. It's going to be about you, not about them. And it's going to be about you going in and washing your hands and not putting your fingers in your mouths or blowing on somebody when you're sneezing or coughing. It's going to be more individual and how secure you feel. But they will have to have perhaps an element of certain amount of people going into these fairs and keeping your distance. But I don't think they've really thought about that. I don't know, Kelly, what your thoughts are.
Well, I think going forward, certainly this year, I think people are going to have virtual fairs. I think that when the fairs come back, I think larger companies that can afford it will do individual installations where they can monitor who comes in and how they do it. I think it will have to change. I know that there's a fair happening in November in Shanghai that I'm supposed to be at because we're launching our de Gournay wallpaper, and that was cancelled 2 months ago. I know that they're having a virtual show now coming up, which I'm going to be doing something, I think, on Friday like this. So I think until everybody feels 100% secure, I think that it's going to be different. I mean, just on the offside, I was talking to a client in Australia yesterday. Now, to go on the beach in Australia, you have to go down a walkway 2 meters apart to each go in the sea, and then you have to swim in a line and come out the other way. So you talk about a fair with hundreds and thousands of people walking through. We're going to have to, we'll be talking about this a year from now going, isn't it great the way they've managed to do it? And there'll be a new system. But I think right now we're 2 months into this and we just have no idea.
I mean, I think I might just add, because I've been in conversations, because obviously we have a fair with DCMS about some of the ways that we could do it. And I think you're right, it's that kind of return on investment, I think, for the exhibitors of what to expect, because it is manageable if you have one flow, you have distance, you had timed ticket entry, but it's looking at that reduction of audience and whether that's enough people for the kind of the exhibition you put on, I think is the balance that people will be making. But there are quite a lot of conversations obviously going on about how to start live events and which live events can when and in tandem.
Like a masterpiece. Sorry, very quickly.
Go on.
Masterpiece, for example, it's quite big spaces and wide corridors.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice browsing, calm, viewing. Whereas someone like a mise en objet is just crowded,
manic.
So you'd have to think about it very carefully.
So the last question before we let you get on with your busy days, I just thought it was quite fun. And actually, we talked about hugs. The question is, might we expect to see a period of fun after this period akin to the Roaring '20s after World War I? And how might this manifest itself? To Kelly first.
Well, it's definitely going to happen here with a bottle of tequila, I can tell you. I don't know. Yeah, as I said to you, I think there's going to be this mass exodus, this mass, in China they call it revenge shopping. People are out shopping. I think that something positive will come out of it. I don't know what it is, but I've always said if I could have lived in another era, it would have been Great Gatsby. So let's hope.
There we go. And Katharine?
I wasn't around in the 1920s, so I don't know what it was like. But
none of us were.
I agree. No, none of you were. But I think parties will definitely happen. I think there will be people. There will be some solace, but there will also be a lot of people that will want to just, go wild. They need to. They've been locked in for a very long time.
Thank you. And thank you so much to both of you for kind of giving us the time. It's a real honour that we've managed to kind of put this together, with thanks to Cultural Communications, of course. But, it started as a little kind of idea just a month ago as to whether we could bring some good cultural sort of leaders or industry leaders. And we're absolutely thrilled that you both joined us. So thank you very much to Kelly Hoppen and to Katharine Pooley.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. And just to anyone else, a reminder that the next LAPADA Leaders webinar will be next Wednesday, the 3rd of June, and we will be talking to Sandy Nairn, who is National Portrait Gallery and also the National Trust, and Caro Howell, who is the director of the Foundling Museum. So I think we'll be looking at the kind of another conversation around museums, what the culture sort of responsibilities are for these public institutions, and how we might look forward to seeing the works of art in person again at some point. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you so much. Bye everyone. Stay safe.
Bye everybody.
Bye.